And it's a very good morning to Domain Managing Editor Alice Stolz. Gee, I love sitting on the desk with you.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
Now, every state has a top suburb in sales of volume of property sales. What are some of the best performing states in the country, or suburbs in each state in the country, is what I'm trying to say?
This is a fascinating snapshot of what happened last year and where buyers were buying the most property. We can see now that obviously Point Cook in Australia was one of the leading areas that basically, and it ended up being, it had the highest sales of anywhere in the country. You just think about that, think about that for a minute, how sort of makes it that land with you and how obviously popular it is amongst buyers.
Absolutely. We just saw some of the other ones around the country, but in Point Cook, I mean, what's going on there? What is it with Point Cook that's going so nuts?
Clearly, affordability is a massive lure for a lot of people here. And that you can have, and I think for a long time, Point Cook was considered a suburb that was on the outskirts of Melbourne. It didn't have a lovely, vibrant community to it. But over time, the layers and layers are being added to it. And now it's becoming a really diverse and eclectic area. And I think you can basically have a house, you can have a garden. It's got wonderful shopping strips in it. I think when it first was built, there was an expectation that it would just be another estate with not much to it. But now it's actually developing soul. And people are living in there and really investing in the community.
Point Cook in Victoria. All right, so what is Sydney's top seller then?
Sydney's top seller is Blacktown, which is 35 k's west of the CBD, and a 10-minute drive from Parramatta, which we really think about as another business district in Sydney. It's affordable. It's $650,000, which is almost just a bit above half the median price of the Sydney median price. And basically what's happening is this inner ring of Sydney is becoming so unaffordable for the average Australian that they're going out a little bit further, and they're being attracted to the sort of the bridesmaid suburbs around it. But Blacktown's another really diverse and eclectic area with fantastic transport. But I think also as jobs in Australia are changing, that people are now not necessarily having to work in the CBD, but in a place like Blacktown you can actually be in the city in 35 minutes thanks to great public transport. Not so much if you're in the car, so you have to keep an open mind about how you're going to get around when you live in those areas.
Right, yeah, as you say, a bit of a theme developing there. Point Cook, Blacktown. What about Queensland, Alice?
So in Queensland, it's up the Upper Coomera area, and that's a really interesting one because it's sort of not that far from Brisbane and not that far from the Gold Coast. So if you're in one of those people who want to sort of have a dual city commute, you can do that. You can be in Brisbane in under an hour and Gold Coast in 30 minutes. And this is a massive town that is growing so fast in population growth, and I think it's less affordable than the Melbourne and Sydney areas. Melbourne and Sydney really can be well under the median. In Queensland, it's less the case in this area, though.
So do we think these are just affordability, or are these becoming first home buyer suburbs?
It's a bit of both of those things, Shelley. Also, there's a lot more stock in these areas. We've talked a lot about, earlier this morning we talked about that lack of stock on the market in Queensland. But in certain areas, there is a lot of stock available in these suburbs. So if you have to buy and you want to buy, at least there's something to actually get you there now. And I think it really is around affordability. I think what we're seeing in Australia is so many people are priced out of where they want to be. They're having to retain an open mind and thinking, you know what, I'm a shift worker, or I can work flexi, I can work from home a couple of days. Maybe the commute thing, I'll park that if it means I can have a house with a garden and be near a lovely local shopping area. I think people are being more open-minded. What the challenge is, and it's a bit of a war cry to governments, to really start thinking, is the infrastructure there enough to sustain us there? Are there enough schools there at primary and secondary levels to get these generations through?
And they should be looking at those, you're right, and building out there and building the infrastructure to then drive people further.
Because to buyers' credit, a lot of buyers, particularly first home buyers, are really open-minded about going further out, realising what they have to do, but they're relying on governments to change policies to ensure they can actually transport themselves around.
It's really interesting that infrastructure is really, above all, almost an affordability conversation when it comes to housing. So we've talked about the East Coast there. What about South Australia?
So in South Australia, it's Moffat Vale in South Australia. Now, look at the median house price there is $310,000. So you can see that's $230 less than the South Australian median, but it's half an hour's drive from the city. It's the largest suburb in the state in population and physical land size, and there are 11 primary schools in this area alone. So you can definitely see the population is really, really swelling there. And to think you're half an hour from beautiful Adelaide Hills and the cities, and you're not that far from Melbourne and Sydney if you want to go off for a weekend and have a bit more culture than what Adelaide offers, which I think it does offer a lot.
That's it. And earlier we heard from Paul about maybe investing outside your state, and Moffat Vale in South Australia might be one of those. That's a great price point.
Could well be.
Okay, Perth?
Baldivis in Perth. So the median there is $377,000. It's quite further out. It's 46 k's from Perth, and it's a semi-rural residential area. But in 2015, it was the fastest growing suburb in Australia. And again, a new local primary school is being constructed, so you can definitely see there's a contraction happening there where people are actually thinking, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to make some sacrifices, I won't be on the edge of Perth City, but it's worth it for my quality of life.
And I think they do create then their own vibe, you know, their own culture and that real sense of community.
But you need people to do that, and I think Point Cook's a really wonderful example of that. I spoke to the director of LJ Hooker out there, and she was saying that initially she was really selling 10 years ago to first home buyers, and now those people are now wanting to upsize, move to different areas of Point Cook, so you're getting different levels of the market there. And I think you can obviously already now that's got solid capital growth out there, and you can actually buy well-established homes that that are actually built, that might have been built 10 years ago. They were well built mostly, so I think there's opportunities there also.